Okay. Evening, everybody. I'm going to call this let's call to order this meeting of the Chatham Township Committee. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as part of the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and Morris County Bill Record on June 12, 2020. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on June 12, 2020. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on June 12, 2020.
Thank you, Greg. Can you please join me in the flag salute?
I'm waiting to be let in.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The right one?
The audio is good. No, see, this is my test of the directions.
I just said it. It's waiting to let you in executive session.
Yeah.
No,
That's a different meeting from where we are now.
start in public.
So, but you're just who you are because you're here physically. So.
Could we have a roll call, please, Greg?
Mrs. Ewald.
Here.
Mrs. Kudako.
Here.
Mrs. Morris, Leader, Deputy Mayor Ness,
Here.
and Mayor Kelly.
Here. Thank you.
We have quorum.
And could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Very good. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. The only item on the agenda for this portion of our public meeting is the resolution to go into executive session. And then we will return at 5:30 to resume our public meeting. So, Greg, could you read the title of this resolution, please?
Resolution 2020-P-17. Resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham and County State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded. Whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from the meeting in certain circumstances. And whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham of the Morris State, New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public on conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event when appropriate, pursuant to JSA 10:4-7 and 4-13, the committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
Thank you, Greg.
I need a motion in a second.
Can I have a motion for that resolution?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Greg?
You on 23? It's 1277?
Yeah.
You okay? I'm sorry, I thought this one.
Did you vote?
Casey, could you repeat that if you would?
I didn't hear what was said. I heard a lot of gobbledygook.
Yeah, can you vote on the resolution?
Oh, yes.
Mrs. Fidalgo,
What?
we're voting on the resolution.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness
Yes.
and Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to executive session. If you can please leave this meeting and go to the one that was in the separate email that I sent this morning. We'll see you there.
Is that on your list?
No, it wasn't. I can cover it if somebody else wasn't planning to.
Black Lives Matter thing? Is that what you're talking about?
A teach-in event.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to check.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the public meeting of the Township Committee for July 9th, 2020. This meeting is being held remotely as a virtual meeting in compliance with the governor's executive orders regarding the coronavirus restrictions. If you are watching via cable TV on Comcast Channel 29 or FiOS Channel 26, you can participate in the public hearings by dialing any of the phone numbers which will be shown on your TV screen when we get to the public comment portion of the meeting, and then dial *9 to raise your hand. If you prefer to participate via Zoom, the webinar ID number for this meeting is listed on the agenda, which is posted on our website. To speak during any of the public comment sessions, follow the Zoom instructions to raise your hand. The Township Committee is continuing to upgrade its technology to improve these virtual meetings. When the pandemic shutdown began in March, none of the meeting rooms here at the municipal building had Wi-Fi service to support a virtual meeting. We have upgraded the system repeatedly since then, and this week we made an additional. Aaron? We have made additional improvements to marry the audio signal for both our cable TV and our Zoom coverage. Not only should this improve the sound quality of the live broadcast, it will reduce post-production editing time, which means that the video recording of this and future Township Committee meetings can be posted on our website more quickly. So thank you for dialing into tonight's meeting, and we will now begin the agenda with reports. Greg, we should probably do actually a roll call first for this public portion of the meeting. Would you do a roll call for us?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Here.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Here, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thanks. I was all botched up for a while there.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, we will go with reports, and Deputy Mayor, you'd like to start?
Thank you. We had a Chatham Recreation meeting the other night, which was very nice to welcome Carol Nauta back. She's doing much better in terms of her illness, and is happy to be back in the mix. So baseball is playing so far. They've started with their practices and with some games. They don't seem to be having any issues with social distancing and with people attending. So Bob walked the fields for one of their practice sessions and games. And so we're kind of monitoring that and helping where they need clarification or assistance. So it was good to get back on the call with all of the private clubs, find out what their future plans are. Overall, the general registration numbers are down. I think that's probably due to the just uncertainty of how things are going to work and what's happening. So they expected those numbers to be down. Some of them are significant with the flag football, and some of them are, 20, 30 kids in the larger groups. Some could be maybe 9 or 8 kids that are not returning, but they're keeping their registrations open to allow people to join once they feel more comfortable joining. So again, very thankful to have Carol back working with our private clubs and our adult recreation programs. Colony Pool, which is a wonderful respite on a 91-degree day with high humidity, has been greatly appreciated by our members. I was there on opening day to see how everything was working. We have our social distance squares. Haven't made it into the water yet, but the water looks great. We were running over the 4th of July weekend anywhere between 190 and 221 people, which was the peak on July 5th. And we've now opened back up. I believe we're at the 500 outside gathering mark. So we didn't surpass that. We didn't have an issue with having to juggle times or people coming. We are running below on membership numbers, which was expected. It's not too bad. We're at, in 2019, at this point in time, we were at 371 memberships. In 2020, same time period, we're at I'm sorry, did I mess that up? At 371 memberships in 2019, 327 memberships in 2020. So that's not so bad. And we're adding new memberships every day. Again, as I think people are seeing that the pools have come back online and are operating, and lots of people posting terrific pictures that I think that hopefully will continue to get closer to our number from last year. Did you want to add something to that, Tom? We started this week with guest passes. We delayed allowing guests just to see how everything was going to turn out, particularly over a holiday weekend. There's so many of these things are just, we don't know what's going to happen until it happens. So we started with guest passes this week. So people are welcome to bring guests, especially if we're now at 500. We did have some questions about the use of the playground at Colony. The Colony playground is a very, very small footprint. And in order to be able to keep a socially distanced 6 feet and for parents to be able to manage their children in that scenario, we don't foresee being able to open that little playground area. I don't think at all, unless there's something changes with the 6 foot social distancing. It's just not possible. It's not that big. And the other questions that we got were about guests, the snack shack opening, which it is not going to open. Members are invited to bring their food in or order in and make use of all of our wonderful restaurants and businesses who could certainly appreciate the patronage. The last part of my report is I've reached out to Chief Miller. Hope One, which is the Morris County Sheriff's Program that provides information on drug addiction, on Narcan administration, on all sorts of good things, which has been at our ShopRite shopping center pre-pandemic and has been well attended. That's back in action. So I've spoken with Chief Miller and to look to schedule a visit from Hope One in the near future. So we'll update that when we get that news. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Tracy. Karen, would you like to give any reports?
Yeah, I would just like to make sure everyone is reminded that next Saturday, the 18th, not this coming Saturday, but the following Saturday is going to be our shred event for the senior center. Please remember to bring all of your things, your tax documents and everything else that might be left over down to the senior center. I think my internet connection is a little unstable here. But that is, am I okay?
You're good.
Right. That is Saturday, the 18th from 9 to noon at the middle school parking lot in Chatham Borough. It's for a great cause. Obviously, a lot of fundraising things have been postponed and canceled and so on. So the senior center is looking forward to a great turnout. Hope everybody can come on down. That's it.
Thank you. Stacy?
So on Tuesday, we have a Board of Health meeting, and I just wanted to let residents know that there was a concern about leaf blower, especially commercial leaf blower noise, that will be discussed at Tuesday's Board of Health meeting. Our Board of Health officer was not available at the time of the discussion, so it's going to be brought up again this Tuesday to get some insight from him in terms of what other towns are doing to address the issue. It's come up as a concern before, and really there's not an interest in imposing additional regulations, but we're in a different environment where a lot more people are working from home and children are learning from home. So the board just wanted to hear other options, and we did invite local landscapers as well to participate and to give their input. So I encourage residents, if it's a concern for them, if it's been a real problem in terms of noise and better managing that noise to dial in on Tuesday, the Board of Health meeting, and the information, the agenda is online and you can get the information for the dial in there. I did participate in Congresswoman Cheryl's update on the 2020 census. Morris County is doing very well at 76.6%. Chatham, which just lists Chatham, so I assume that's the Chathams, listed 78.8%. So we're doing wonderfully. You know, given that we're all concerned about a potential resurgence of COVID-19 and increased cases, I would encourage residents who haven't yet gone online to do the survey to please do so, because the door knocking will begin in August in terms of reaching out and you know, to residents that have not submitted their information. So that is 2020census.gov. So I encourage everybody who hasn't gone online, who hasn't completed the census, to do that. And then also the mental health initiative. The survey is still open, but I expect it'll close shortly. So I encourage residents to please go online and fill out that survey on tritownccares.org. And the last thing I wanted to mention, this Saturday at 4 p.m. is the Black Lives Matter teach-in. It's Black Lives Matter and Wind of the Spirit sponsored, and it has been coordinated by a number of our young people in town. So I encourage residents to attend. Last count I heard was about 500 people planning to go. And it's going to be at the train station at 4 p.m. on Saturday.
Thank you, Stacy. Les, report.
Next, but my dogs are barking. Anyway, this was the Environmental Commission met the other night, and in an effort to conserve the monarch butterfly, they're going to be giving out milkweed seedlings at the farmer's market on Saturday. And that's this Saturday, July 11th. And they are also pleased that the Lincoln Landscaping has been retained for another year, taking care of our athletic fields and also at Colony Pool, not using any herbicides or pesticides. And Chatham is a control model for other schools in New Jersey. And one other thing, they will be looking into finding possible places for electrical vehicle charging stations throughout the area. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Celeste. Greg, anything to report?
Maybe the only thing that I would report would be to give thanks to the many poll workers that made Tuesday's primary election a breeze, and to thank our public works staff who helped me a lot with getting supplies over there. Greg Genovese and James Alphonse from Public Works helped me get supplies over from here to the polling place, and then earlier yesterday, Ray Clark and Roger Casella helped me get everything back. So I just want to, thank those who played a role in getting everything done.
Okay, thank you for handling a very offbeat election with one polling place.
Yes, it was an unusual election. The first time we've had to do everything vote by mail and everything provisional at the polling place, but everything ran smoothly. So I just want to thank all of our poll workers for the job well done.
Very good.
Thank you, Greg.
Yes, thank you. John Rushke, do you have anything to report from engineering?
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Albert, anything from the legal side?
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor, but I do have certain things to address before they're acted upon on the agenda that I would like to report at that point.
Okay, as we go through the agenda, very good. And Bob?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have five items to report on. The first item is that there are 3 resolutions on tonight's agenda that are related to obtaining additional grant funding. The town received an additional $40,671.66 for the Safe Routes to Schools grant for sidewalks along Lafayette Avenue to Spring Street. So one resolution is to accept the grant funding. Another one is to place it into the budget. And then the third one is to amend an agreement with the engineering firm that the state DOT hired for this. So those are resolutions 166, 167, and 168. Resolution 165, which is on the agenda tonight, is for our sewer utility. It's a long-winded agenda, but the summation is that there are 2 pumps in our south side sanitary pumping station. The pumps, both pumps are approximately 30 years old. Both have been rebuilt. Both are developing problems. There's a 16-week lead time to get new pumps. We are asking that one new pump be ordered this year, and then it'll be installed. It's $30,000 for the pump as well, and then $13,000 to install it down 25 feet into the well hole. And then once that new pump is installed, we're going to cannibalize one of the pumps and try and rebuild the second one so that it will last a few years before we have to buy a new pump. But we really do need this so that when people flush, they don't have to worry in the future. So that's on the agenda. At this afternoon's meeting, we have the improved audio and video for both our Zoom and our cable linkages. So we had upgrades that were done that were authorized by the Township Committee a couple of meetings ago. So Gramco, the company with our audio-visual equipment and recording equipment, came in and started work on Tuesday, and they finished early this afternoon. The Township Committee should know, and so should our residents, that our Township Clerk, Greg Pink, and our videographer, Alexandra Gonzalez, deserve a round of applause for helping. They came Tuesday night to troubleshoot some of the problems that we initially encountered. So what we have is that we basically have 4 generations of technology, customized technology, that have been melded together in a 10-year-old board. And by gosh, it works, but it took a little bit of doing. So both of them deserve our thanks for making sure that this works today. And then starting tomorrow, the energy efficiency grant from PSE&G, the work will start here for new lighting, energy efficient lighting in the building. And we will be monitoring that. They have completed the police department, and then afterwards we will do the HVAC systems and the boilers. And then last but not least, over the last 18 months, we have been tracking, people have the tree removal permits, people have asked to have trees taken down, and our list shows that there should be approximately 102 trees replanted. So we're going to be reaching out to our residents. They have six months to plant trees, just to see if they planted them and to give them a friendly reminder that when the planting season begins again, please plant the trees so that we can, we can have healthy trees and a good canopy. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. If there are no questions on any of those reports, we'll go into the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, if I may interrupt, is there an intention to have a public first hearing of citizens at this point, or is that reserved for later on in the agenda?
We just have it on the agenda for after the 2 public hearings on the 2 ordinances, followed by the public hearing. We could have one now to start it off with, though. Sure. With that suggestion, let's have we'll open up a public hearing for the public for anything other than an item that is specifically on the agenda for its own public hearing, which would apply to the two ordinances that are up for final adoption. When you raise your hand and are recognized, would you please start by identifying yourself by name and address? All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes. And rather than use any of your time answering questions, we will keep track of the questions and wait until each speaker has finished before answering their questions. We do have a full agenda tonight, so we're asking that each member of the public please limit themselves not only to 5 minutes, but 1 comment for each of the separate public hearings that we do have on the agenda tonight. So with that being said, Greg, okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Dan Miller, Green Village Road. Stacy, I heard you speaking about the leaf blowers and the noise, and something that I've brought to the committee on various occasions is bike riders and joggers and the noise produced. And I was hoping that maybe that could be addressed. There was a time when, and there are two signs on Green Village Road. They're small. They're about the size of no parking signs that Mayor Sullivan had placed there to respect the neighborhood. But out here, and I don't know if you know it, but things echo quite loudly. And from 5:30 in the morning until dark, we have bike riders and joggers that speak very loudly. Many of them probably don't even know it. Okay. So, I'm not trying to disparage any of that, but, I live by Lewanika Brook and we can hear them from the firehouse coming down the road speaking. I did notice a few months back that there was one of the electronic boards by the post office had a message on it for bike riders not to ride double across the road and so on. But there was nothing about noise or to respect the neighborhood, because they're talking on phones, they're talking amongst themselves. They holler back at each other about, car on the right, so on and so forth. But they're quite loud. And when folks around the neighborhood are trying to enjoy their morning coffee at 6 or 6:15 in the morning, it's not really all that welcome, just like leaf blowers aren't when folks are trying to work. So if that issue could be addressed, and, it's really, in my opinion, an informational thing, a signboard would address. I saw Mendham on Tempe Wick Road last year. They had the electronic signboards up saying, please respect the neighborhood, please be as quiet as possible, message of that nature. And I was hoping maybe we could get something like that on Green Village Road, maybe down by the firehouse, maybe up by the post office, just as a reminder, to try to be respectful of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I know I've seen that digital sign up near the fire department, and it has addressed noise, but I think the situation with the digital sign is that we do need to move it around the township for different traffic and neighborhood priorities. So I will definitely put it on the list to make sure that it cycles back onto Green Village Road. So thank you. Adam Fiola. Adam.
Hi, Adam Fiola of the law firm of Sills, Cummins & Gross on behalf of Kronos Holding LLC, the owner of 522 Southern Boulevard, Block 128, Lot 2. I first just had a quick question. I was a little confused by the public hearing portion. It sounded like the public only has an ability to comment on the ordinances, but not the resolutions. Is that correct? Or will there be, should I avoid talking about the resolutions right now because there's going to be time later for that?
No, the two ordinances have their dedicated public hearings, and we ask that if anyone has any comments on the ordinances to reserve them for those specific public hearings. However, this public hearing and then the public comment session at the end of the meeting, both of those are for any topic that anybody wants to raise. We just ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Understood. Thank you. I'll make this brief. We submitted a letter only about 2 hours ago to the township attorney and township administrator by email regarding our position. So I don't want to talk too long, but there are two resolutions affecting my client's properties on tonight, resolutions 2020-169 and resolution 2020-170, it seems like, are the new numbers. The second one is an authorization to solicit requests for proposals or requests for qualifications for a redeveloper of the property. We believe that this is acting prematurely in soliciting redevelopers before the property is even deemed an area in need of redevelopment. The planning board hasn't even been authorized to undertake an investigation, let alone undertake it and then have the township committee deem the property in need of redevelopment. So we respectfully request that the township committee not to move forward with the requests for solicitations of proposals or qualifications for a redeveloper of a site that has not been deemed an area in need of redevelopment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Albert, could you respond to any of that to shed some light on what the timing is?
Mr. Mayor, I'll, as I indicated to you before, I'll report on those two resolutions before the Township Committee considers them.
When we get to that point, okay.
Yes.
Very good. Is there anyone else who'd like to raise their hand for this public comment session?
Mayor, since we do have some people participating by phone, we should remind them that they may raise their hand by hitting *9 if they so choose.
Thank you, and you've taken care of that. Thank you. We'll give it another 30 seconds, but we don't see any hands being raised, so this is the last call for this public hearing, and there will be another chance at the end of the meeting, as well as the specific public hearings on the two ordinances. And seeing no one's hand being raised, we will move on and close the public hearing at this point and move on to the consent agenda. Greg, could you please read the resolutions on the consent agenda?
Yes, I will ask that one of them be pulled for a separate vote, the approving the executive session minutes, as Mrs. Schwartz had not been at the executive session. But if then I'll read the remainder. For the consent agenda, we have resolution 2020-160, payment of bills, 2020-161, approving meeting minutes, 2020-163, settlement of tax appeal for Chatham Mall, 2020-164, refunding overpayment of taxes, 2020-165, authorizing purchase and installation of new electric pump at Southside Sanitary Sewer Pump Station, 2020-166, amending federal aid agreement, 2020-167, amending 2020 budget, and 2020-168, amending agreement with IH Engineers. And those last three are the ones that Mr. Hoffman addressed earlier in his report.
Very good. Can I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda minus resolution 2020-162?
So moved.
And a second? All right, a little static there. Stacy, is that a second? Oh. Stacy, you muted her at our end, or she muted at her end?
I'll second it.
Okay.
I don't know. I couldn't hear Stacy.
Thank you, Celeste. Yes, any discussion by anyone about any of those items?
I would just like to make note of the fact that these items regarding federal aid and a budget amendment for the Lafayette Avenue and Spring Street sidewalks is practically comical to me. Most of the folks that I know very well know that this would be a re-election year for me if I had chosen to seek re-election. This sidewalk was an ill-starred item when I was running for my first term 6 years ago. And the fact that we have not even been able to get out Avenue and Spring Street, etc., to me is just, it's a comedy. It was a ill-conceived sidewalk to begin with, and we can't seem, as I said, to find our own way around this thing. And so I would just like to comment on the comical nature of this sidewalk from square one.
Very good. John Rushke, could you shed some light on specifically what this grant will do and what the status of the project is at this point and what we can hope moving forward?
No, I hate to say it, but I almost agree with Councilman Swartz on this app. This is just completely ridiculous regarding how long this process is taking to get these sidewalks constructed. You know, the DOT implemented this program to actually try to expedite projects, and you know, this grant is a 2014 grant that we received. So it's been going on for 6 years, and it's just insane. And what's very disappointing is the fact that the consultant, DOT's consultant, you know, he did his design and his initial proposal, the way he represented the scope, it concluded everything. It was a soup to nuts to get us to, you know, contract documents. And all of a sudden we received this documentation in the mail that they've upped our grant to, you know, to retain the consultant to do final design. And we weren't even in the loop. I didn't know that the consultant asked for additional funds. This was like, I thought they were working on it. You know, the representation that I had was that they're still waiting for the DOT in Trenton to review their plans for environmental impacts. And you know, that process is a long process. It takes at least 6 months usually, and we're probably over a year waiting for the DOT to get back to us on this project. And you know, the fact that they're giving us money to use their consultant to expedite this project, it just seems completely insane how long it's taken. And this is not the only grant we have. We have a grant that we obtained in 2016, and we got another grant in 2018. So we're doing our job to get money to construct sidewalks, but it's just taken forever for the DOT to go through their process. You know, this is not something that we can expedite. It's solely being driven by the DOT's process of you know, the multiple processes that are involved with these federal grants. And you know, the most advantageous part of these grants is that you can receive a significant amount of money. And these grants are hundreds of thousands of dollars versus our typical municipal aid grant. We get $150,000 plus or minus for paving a road. But these grants they come with substantial dollar amounts, but they just take forever to complete. So it is quite ridiculous. You know, the point that, you know, I still remember 6 years ago that, you know, we had public hearings with the public coming in, talking about the trees and talking about, you know, the alignment, and it is completely insane. I can. So here we are. We're moving on to the final design phase, and a lot of times you ask me, when is this going to be done? I have no clue. It's just taking forever.
All right, Tracy, do you have another question, or did that answer it?
No, that's
okay. And John, you do mention we have a couple of grants out there. This specifically is for Lafayette, from Watchung up to Lafayette School, and
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I'm sorry to be so blunt. You know, it is very frustrating trying to, you know, get answers, and you know, I have a long string of emails constantly just reminding them, where are we, you know, what can we advance this? And you know, you get all these excuses, you know, regarding the short staff and everything else, regarding down in Trenton, how they can't review things quickly, and it just goes on and on. But we do have 2 other grants on Shunpike, and the one project is under review, and it's now under review on the environmental phase down at the Trenton. So that's in that black hole now. And then the third application is we're just in the process of securing the design phase for that, and getting the consultant on board to start that design process. So. It's just nothing else to say on that, Mayor.
John, if I can be blunt, are we allowed to start on the projects that we do want, or we're not holding up all of our sidewalk projects because of this Lafayette one?
Well, these are we have 3 federal grant programs, and all 3 of them are held up. by the design phase of the DOT consultant.
But are some of them more simple to achieve than others? I mean, particularly when it comes to the length of the sidewalk or the various neighborhoods, telephone poles, things along those lines. If one is simpler to get the ball rolling on, can we actually put that ahead of the?
These are not complicated projects at all. We've received grant applications through the municipal aid program, and the municipal aid program is a very straightforward program, and we've done multiple grants under the program, and usually we can almost get the sidewalk completed in the same year that we receive the funds. So it's just that this federal process is just very cumbersome. So these are not complicated projects. They're simple sidewalk projects. It's not complicated at all.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? If not, Greg, can we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ewald? Mrs. Fondaco? You can unmute yourself, please.
Yes, yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Very good.
Then next up, we have the 2021-62.
Please.
For resolution 2021-62, do we have a motion in a second?
So moved.
Could I have a second on the motion to adopt the executive session minutes? Second from Stacy. Stacy, could you check your microphone? We're not hearing you.
Is it battery operated maybe? Your microphone?
It's staticky when we hear anything at all from you, Stacy. It's staticky. Nothing we can do at this end, Greg?
Can you speak again, Stacy?
Wait.
Stacy, if you can hear me, maybe try logging out and coming back in. I wish I had some Jeopardy music.
Yeah, that's right. We'll give Stacy a moment so we don't vote without her.
Any luck now? Is this better?
Oh, much better.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay, we have a motion in a second. Mrs. Ewald, your vote on the approving the executive session minutes?
Yes.
Mrs. Fondaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
I will abstain.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We've now come to the public hearing and final adoption of ordinances. And the first item on the agenda is ordinance 2020-11. Greg, could you read the title?
Yes. Ordinance 2020-11, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to amend subsection 30-75.1 zone districts to include a new R3 Affordable Housing Residence District, R3AH, of section 30-75 titled Zone Districts and Enforcement of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Chatham to amend subsection 30-75.2 titled Map and Schedule of subsection 30-75 titled Zone Districts and Enforcement of Chapter 30 titled Land Development of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Chatham to amend the map by designating block 67, lots 17 and 17.01, fronting on Hillside Avenue within the R3AH zone to amend the schedule by adding a new R3 Affordable Housing Residence District, and to add new subsection 30-79.1 titled R3 Affordable Housing Residence District, R3AH, of section 30-79 titled Affordable Housing of Chapter 30 titled Land Development of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Chatham. And I'm pleased to announce that at this meeting, we were able to get the ad in the newspaper on time. So we're
Good to go.
good to move forward.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. Albert, could you give us some explanation on that, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. As the clerk explained, ordinance 2020-11 is a zoning ordinance rezoning a portion of property fronting Hillside Avenue across from the Dixie-Dale farm. That ordinance was referred to the planning board for a master plan inconsistency determination. The planning board found that the ordinance is inconsistent with the master plan, but that it promotes affordable housing within the Township of Chatham and recommended its adoption. On June 16th, 2020, the Township planner submitted a memorandum detailing the planning board's conclusion and recommendation. As the clerk said, proper notice of this ordinance has been provided in the newspaper and to adjoining property owners and adjoining municipalities. So the Township Committee has jurisdiction to hold the public hearing on the ordinance. After the public hearing, if the Township Committee decides to proceed forward, it should consider the reasoned resolution on the agenda as subparagraph A below the ordinance first, and then vote on the ordinance. If the Township Committee desires to proceed forward with this ordinance because the planning board found that it is inconsistent with the master plan, it must adopt a separate resolution explaining why it is overriding the planning board, and that is called a reasons resolution. You're stating your reasons for disagreeing with the planning board. With that explanation, Mr. Mayor, if the Township Committee has any questions, it would be appropriate, unless the Township Committee has any questions, it would be appropriate to open the hearing to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. With that explanation, let's open up the public hearing to the public. And if anyone would like to speak, please raise your hand and be recognized. And I see James Anderson. I see your hand is raised. You have the floor.
Mr. Anderson, if you could unmute yourself and speak.
James Anderson, we can't hear you at this end. I think you're muted at your end. If you could unmute yourself, please. There you go.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm James Anderson at 287 Fairmont Avenue. I'm one of the adjoining properties. As a matter of fact, I am staring right now at the property that we are talking about. The other day, as a recommendation of yours, I went down onto Hillside Avenue, happened to be quite early in the morning. I brought the map down. I looked around. I walked the property back and forth to where you want to put in these 5 homes. I really don't understand how you feel the zoning between the R3 that's up top and what's going on down below the steep slope here really has anything to do with each other. We had a heavy rainstorm the other day. The water that was coming off the steep slope was running right across this property. On one side of the property, you have the Dixie-Dale farm, which is now going to be turned into a whole mountain of homes. Now you're going to come to the other side of the street. And on a little sliver of land between the street and the steep slope, you're going to put in 5 houses. And when I walk this, to me, it's terrible. The wildlife, the deer, there's birds that are on because of the steep slope. There's red-tailed hawks. There's a whole plethora of wildlife over here that's going to be displaced permanently from what you're doing across the street and what you're doing now coming onto this side of the street. I realize right now it's zoned for 2. And this is really one of the many unspoiled areas of Chatham Township that is really going to take a major hit. There's winners and losers on every project, and myself, my neighbors, the wildlife, the trees, we're all going to lose here. And I'm disappointed that the township is feeling that this is the right thing to do. It's one thing to go across the street and build all that whole area up. Then now you're starting to encroach on the other side of the street in a very small area, trying to really pack a lot of stuff. And I realize at this point there's very little that I can do about it. I'm gonna voice my displeasure about it. I'm a approximately 20-year homeowner here, and I just feel like I'm a loser here, and that the wildlife's a loser here, and what I'm looking at now is going to be gone for good, and that I really hope you think about this carefully before you do it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. As the mayor, I do sit on the planning board, and let me relay some of the thought process and the discussion that did happen at the planning board meeting. I think that there were 2 concerns on the part of the planning board. One was how best to preserve the steep slopes, and the other one was how best to be consistent in terms of development of that strip with what the surrounding area is. I think in terms of the protection of the steep slope, the logic that made sense to the majority on the planning board was that the previous zoning on that property allowed for 2 houses to be built, each on 2.5 acres of property. And the concern was that in itself did not protect steep slopes. Larger houses would almost inevitably be pushed farther into the property, and you're absolutely correct. There's a limited amount of level land, and then it starts to go up very steeply to Fairmount Avenue. The other concern on steep slopes was that there was nothing inherently in this existing zoning that protected the steepest part of the slope up facing on Fairmount Avenue near where your house is. Yes, we do have steep slope ordinances and we do have tree removal ordinances, but in terms of the zoning itself, there was nothing there that protected that area. And the feeling on the majority of the planning board members was that we could take any future development on the Fairmount Avenue frontage of this property, we could take that off the table permanently by incorporating conservation easement requirements into this rezoning. And that's part of what's done. Everything on that hillside that is greater than 20% slope, which will be from right behind that, well, not right behind, but at the back of the backyards of these properties on hillside, all the way up to where it touches on Fairmount alongside your homes, will be permanently protected conservation easement. So we felt that this was a dramatic and significant greater protection of that slope than what's there now. So that was the steep slope part of the logic. The other part of the logic on 5 homes as opposed to the existing zoning allowing 2 homes. And I think that that's a topic that people can have a serious discussion about. It is definitely more dense development than what the previous zoning would allow. And that was the reason why the planning board took the position it did, which was to say that this does not agree with our existing master plan. However, they are recommending that the Township Committee do make this zoning change because it does advance two significant goals of the master plan. One is the steep slope protection. The other goal of the master plan is housing that is available at a range of expense points. And by going with the 5 houses, one of which will be a group home, which helps the township meet its affordable housing obligation. The planning board felt that this was consistent with the other homes that are existing on Hillside Avenue going into Chatham Borough, that the size lots would be most compatible with them, and that it would be in sync with the development that's moving forward across Hillside Avenue on the Dixie Dale farm. So they felt that the scale and of these, albeit more dense homes, that it would be more consistent with that existing development along Hillside Avenue, and that it would meet a significant goal of the planning of the master plan by providing a lot for a group home to help the township meet its affordable housing. So I can see your concern about 5 homes. I think that you're absolutely right. It's more dense, and I hope I've hopefully tried to explain the steps that were taken to actually improve the steep slope protection and all that means to your side of things, and explain the density change as well. Okay. Greg, if you, yes, Dan, if you would unmute. Okay, very good. Dan, you have the floor.
Okay, Dan Miller, Green Village. Yeah, I totally understand what you're trying to accomplish and why you're making this choice. Although I disagree, and I'll tell you one of the reasons why I disagree. And you know, this probably goes more to Deputy Mayor Ness, you, Mayor Kelly, and you, Committeewoman Schwartz, as you were last year when there was issues going on Woodmont. Okay, when the issues were going on Woodmont, there was a massive push, basically, and a referral to the planning board by the committee to basically limit R3 and R4 zones throughout the entire town. And now the hypocrisy to go and make an R3 zone more dense just doesn't make sense to me, and it really doesn't jive with the direction that the committee was going in just a year ago. You know, which I certainly had issue with, because, you know, I believe you do have to look at it at a neighborhood and a topography type of way. But that's not what the committee was choosing to do just a year ago. But now it is, and I'd like to ask the question, why such a reversal?
I can speak to part of that, Dan. It was in 2018 that the then committee was first asked by the Woodland neighborhood to take a look into what we were calling, or what they were calling, inconsistent lots in those neighborhoods in the R4 zone that may not comport with the rest of the neighborhood, that were larger than what the zoning required, and could have much larger houses built there. In 2018, that request went in, it went to a special committee and there was no report back out. In 2019, we were asked again to take a look at these anomaly lots across the R4 zone to see if there was going to be an ongoing issue, if there was going to be 100-foot lots in the R4 zone that were going to have developers that were interested in them build potentially a home that's going to be out of character with the neighborhood, much larger than the other homes. And we put that to the planning board. So there really wasn't any request other than to look at these anomaly lots. Is this going to be an issue? The restrictions in the R3 zone, I believe, were put in 2008, which had to do with the frontage and then the size of the building that you could ultimately build. And they were divided up into, John, you can help me on that, 100 foot, it started at 100 foot, and then it went up in increments from there. So that was done a while ago. And the question was, that was for the R3 zone. And the question was, if you did that for the R4 zone, starting at 100 feet, would that have a better impact on a neighborhood that may have an anomaly lot in it like it did in Woodlawn? And we still have not received any feedback from the planning board on that. So without any feedback and without any discussion on it, there really was no position to take. So, you know, hopefully they'll get a chance to address it. They've been really tied up with a lot of the finishing up Dixie-Dale last year, and then with you know, some of the affordable housing things. But hopefully we'll get an answer to what if there is an issue with anomaly lots, and address it in the neighborhoods, so that if it's over 100 feet, what can be done to help that neighborhood out.
Any comments from anyone else?
Yeah, Dan, I appreciate your comment, but just a point of clarification that these lots are not the R3 zone now. It's actually the R1A zone, and so what this is doing is taking the R3, which is relatively predominant on Fairmont Avenue, and just pushing it down the hillside. So it's not condensing or changing an existing R3 zone. It's taking the zone of an R1A and converting it to an R3, and the R3 is in that is adjoining this area on Fairmont.
Any other comments from the public on?
Dan has his hand up again, but we don't have any other speakers.
Go ahead, Dan, if you want to respond.
Yes, the only comment I wanted to make was that, and it even goes to what the deputy mayor is saying, is that, you know, we were looking for a limit on density and, you know, a limit on size. And the committee was in full favor of that, as it sounds as though it still is. And now it seems like a total reversal of course. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Dan. We have a public hearing open. Any other comments on the ordinance? Seeing none?
We have one more.
Oh, okay. Greg.
Mark Hamilton.
Mark Hamilton, you have the floor.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I just want to make a quick point. I know I have 5 minutes, and I know this is a little off agenda, but possibly as a courtesy to people, if it could be addressed, is if there is a plan for these meetings to move back to their regularly scheduled time at some point, or are they permanently at 5:30? But that's a side issue. As far as this particular issue goes, I don't want to belabor the point, and I know you have a busy agenda tonight, but I want to chime in and just sort of, for the record, you know, compound upon something Mr. Miller just said regarding the reversal of course. And we've been down this road many times. That last year there was an effort to change the the layout over there on this site to move it from 2 lots to 4, and that was rejected as being too dense. And now all of a sudden 4 was too dense last year, but 5 is okay this year. And we get that you have tried to explain why that is, and a big point of it is the affordable housing. I just wanted to link that into something that has been thematic in the last year or two, which is the ominous specter of litigation from builders. It has always been that if we don't do what affordable housing advocates want, the risk is you could have a builder's remedy lawsuit, which effectively, I'm oversimplifying, means that a builder can get a court order allowing him to circumvent the zoning and effectively do whatever he wants as long as 20% of it is affordable housing. And it's just ironic to me that voluntarily and unsolicitedly, the committee and the planning board should suddenly reverse course and effectively commit themselves to the worst case scenario, which is throwing out the zoning that last year was agreed was appropriate and deciding to massively increase the density in this environmentally sensitive area because you get the carrot back of 20% of the 5 lots is going to be affordable housing. And so I don't really understand, and that's not really a question, but why the board would submit, or the committee would submit voluntarily to the worst case scenario when they had said this was such a thing that we wanted to avoid at all possible costs. So that's more a comment than a question, but I do have a question, which is if there is any communication with borough governmental officials or planning boards with respect to the adjoining, I believe, 2.5 acre lot that is contiguous with this lot, and how that is potentially going to be developed, and how, you know, the spread of, you know, overwhelming density along what is currently a largely untouched part of the Chathams would be affected, and whether that was taken into consideration, how that open space is at risk, albeit in the borough, by putting this very dense piece of development on this lot. And I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you.
You already explained the differences in the.
Yeah, that part of it I think has been explained.
In the 2018 versus the 2019.
Right. In terms of the question about the borough did a while back change the zoning on their side of the property line to allow affordable housing, and there has been no change in that for several years. So there has been no communication of anything in the works on that. You know, we are aware of what the redevelopment projects that were on the front burner for the borough down in River Road and in their Post Office Plaza area, and both of those have been put on the temporary hold for now. So that's the extent of our knowledge of their status at the moment.
Well, I think Post Office Plaza has been put on hold. I think the River Road development is moving forward.
Okay, very good. I hadn't seen any progress on either one of them, but okay. Okay, Greg, anyone else with their hand up?
Not at the moment.
Okay, let's close the public hearing on this ordinance, and I'll open it up for comments or questions among the township committee members.
I am happy to reiterate my perspective on this whole thing regarding particularly the planning board hearing on the matter of rezoning this property years ago and deciding that 4 lots on this particular sector was too much and 3 was acceptable. And once again, I will reiterate what I said at our previous meeting. The fact that we've gone from 4 being unacceptable to 5 being okay is the height of hypocrisy on our part. I will echo Mr. Hamilton's sentiment regarding the fact that if a builder comes waltzing in and tell us what we're going to do in Chatham, all of a sudden we throw our hands up as if to say, you know, we'll do what you need us to do. I am a big advocate of handling situations outside of institutions for developmentally disabled adults, developmentally disabled kids, I am the niece of a developmentally disabled woman who lived a beautiful life well into her 50s because she received so many different varieties of care, including a good, consistent exposure to other folks. And the idea of group homes notwithstanding, which once again, I'm a big proponent of, I understand that the affordable housing component here makes this okay in terms of the planning board's reasons, resolution, etc. But the hypocrisy of saying that 5 houses is okay here is not lost on me. I don't think it's lost on the people who are tuning in also. The Dixie-Dale development of Sam Averett's acreage was painstaking. And when we talk about the planning board over the last number of years and our dedication to it here at the township committee level also was painstaking. And I believe that this was, the Dixie-Dale development was a great nod to the environmental attention we paid to Sam's property. I think Sam, if he is looking down, is happy about what happened and happy about the fact that his family has made a great judgment in terms of how to pass this property on to the next series of generations in Chatham Township. So all that being said, it is ridiculous to me that 5 houses are going in across the street.
Thank you, Karen. Any other comments from township committee members?
I think if we want to talk about ridiculous, I think we need to talk about what happened to Dixie-Dale and the
Not ridiculous at all. Dixie-Dale was a wonderful marriage between the
Karen,
you can just hold off.
Karen, wait a second, Karen, we'll come back.
So I think that, you know, looking at the density of 53 units, the steep slopes, the fill, the massive amount of fill that's going to go on there, the removal of a barn from the late 1800s, that's an historical asset of the property, and certainly neglecting to negotiate part of that property if it was going to be disturbed for luxury units, and not including affordable housing as an inclusive part of that, which is what our residents wanted. Even when they were willing to build those units at no cost to the township, that could have been solved with better heads up and less involvement with the developer, better involvement in looking toward the future of the township, and utilizing that land that was going to be disturbed, which is 30 acres. So I think that if you wanted to go back and look at the hypocrisy and kind of working more in tune with the developer and less in tune with the township, you can just look at Dixie-Dale.
Or 100 homes. Be great.
And I guess, I mean, I'll just repeat the one, you know, I think that a significant difference is that the current plan for these 5 homes does include the conservation easement on the steep slopes. I think that that was a major concern the first time through, and that was the impact that those backyards going up the slope were going to have. And I think we've put a maximum limit on their extension into the trees and into the slopes there at behind these houses. That did not exist on the first proposal that was made. So that did carry weight with me on considering that. Any other comments? Albert suggested that if we're going to move forward, we really ought to move forward first with the reasons resolution. Greg, could you read the title of the reasons resolutions and we'll talk about that for a minute?
Yes, the resolution is Resolution 2020-146, a resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham and the County of Morris, outlining the reasons for enacting ordinance number 2020-11.
Thank you, Greg. Can I have a motion to introduce Resolution 2020, adopt 2020-146?
So moved.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Celeste. Before we vote, any comments on Resolution 2020-146? 146. I guess I'd just like to make the comment that this reasons resolutions is required in a situation like this, where the planning board finds that an ordinance is not consistent with the master plan. However, I think it is very, very important to point out that even though that was the finding of the planning board, their resolution specifically recommends that we do make this zoning change. They felt that the goals of the master plan that this zoning change advanced were advancing the goals of the master plan, and therefore merited it being adopted. If there are any other questions or comments, Greg, could we have a roll call?
Based on the discussion at the planning.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just based on the conversation at the planning board meeting, the reasons resolution, I think, outlines, exactly what you said and exactly the support for why this needs to move forward, that it's meeting, affordable housing is part of our master plan. We have to provide for affordable housing. So not only does it provide for affordable housing, it also provides it in a manner that's consistent across, throughout the township. The R3 zone is throughout the township, and we also get to protect those steep slopes. So that was, and not just, initially it was just going to be the portion up to Fairmount, but now we have it cutting across all 5 properties, anything steeper than 20%. So there was a lot of discussion to try and come into, to meet the goals of the master plan overall, and not just to, trump zoning, with which meeting affordable housing is part of our overall master plan and obligation. So it wasn't just to trump with affordable housing, but it was to meet some of these other issues that which established zoning to begin with, and that was the steep slopes. So I think it's basically explained here in the reasons resolution, and I plan to support it.
Thank you.
Can I just point out that there's somebody who has her hand raised in our list of attendees? Does anybody else see that, or is it just me?
Yes.
That came in after the public hearing was closed, but
we've moved on from the public hearing. I think we held the public hearing and tried to recognize everybody, so we can't keep going back.
No.
Greg, could we have a roll call on the reasons resolution?
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Again, notwithstanding my desire to see group homes and developmentally disabled adults receive their proper attention, I'm voting against it. No.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes. And could we also have a roll call on the rezoning ordinance itself, Greg?
You have to move that first.
I'm sorry.
You have to move it.
We have to move that one first? I'm sorry, I thought we already had. Could I have a motion to adopt ordinance 2020-11?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Yeah, here's the list first.
Very good.
Mrs. Ewald?
Yes.
Mrs. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
No.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Greg. That brings us to ordinance 2020-12. Greg, if you could read the title, please.
This is ordinance 2020-12, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the conveyance of a portion of certain real property located on Southern Boulevard, shown as block 48.16, lot 117.27 on the Township tax map, and commonly known as the skate park, to Southern Boulevard Urban Renewal LLC.
Thank you, Greg. We will open this up to a public comment. if anybody would like to raise their hand and make a comment regarding this. And actually, while we're doing that, if I could ask Albert to give us a brief description of what this ordinance accomplishes.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. A moment ago, there was a reference to the Dixie-Dale Farm development. This is part of that Dixie-Dale development. It is providing for affordable housing, 24 units of family rental units on the property that is commonly referred to as the skate park adjoining the police department. That area was declared an area in need of redevelopment, and a redevelopment plan was adopted. The original redevelopment plan called for the approximate 3 acres of the skate park and surrounding area to be conveyed to the redeveloper. That redevelopment plan was amended to carve out or to divide that property into 2 parts. Part A, which would be conveyed to the developer, and Part B, which would be retained by the municipality. Part B having the skate park on it, and that would be used for municipal purposes in the future, including affordable housing. This ordinance authorizes the conveyance of the approximate 1 acre parcel to the developer to build the 24 units that have been approved for that site. So this is a continuation of the development of the Dixie-Dale property and of a portion of the skate park, the Dixie-Dale property being 53 units, I believe, of market rate units, and the skate park or this property being 24 affordable units, which is a set aside well in excess of that which is required by law. And so with that background, as I said, this allows the conveyance of the property and under the local lands and buildings law, conveyance of municipally owned property has to be by way of ordinance. With that background, Mr. Mayor, it would be appropriate to open the public hearing. Unless the committee has any questions.
But does anyone have their hands up, Greg?
I do see we have a hand up from Monica. I'm not sure if it's for Vice Mayor this one, but Monica, if you can hear us, you are now active.
Thank you. I had actually raised my hand when you were talking about the prior property, the Charlie Brown's lot, but I see that I think Ms. Swartz had acknowledged that I was waiting on here, but I didn't get the opportunity to say anything before everybody had voted. So I don't even know if I have the ability to speak now on what you've already voted on.
Monica, the previous ordinance is not a Charlie Brown's property. It's the Hillside Avenue ordinance was the immediately previous one, and we did close that public hearing after waiting for anybody to raise their hand. So certainly, if there was any problem, since we were able to see everyone else who raised their hands, I've got to suspect the problem was not at our end. We will have a hearing for citizens after these specific ordinances, and I would like to keep the comments right now in this public hearing focused on this particular ordinance so that we don't start going all over the lot. But you definitely will have a chance to make your comments about 4 items down the agenda at the hearing for citizens on all topics. So
okay, I would just only add that this is my first attempt at one of these Zoom calls. And again, I think I had expressed to you before, people who live in this neighborhood, we're not getting an opportunity to come in there, be heard and seen. So I apologize that I spoke.
Okay, well, look forward to more in-depth comments in just a couple minutes, hopefully. This is the public hearing on ordinance 2020-12, which is the conveyance of the skate park property for the affordable housing there. Is there anyone who would like to comment or have a question on that ordinance? See anybody, Greg?
We do not have anyone.
Okay. Seeing no one, we'll close this public hearing. And I would ask for a motion for the adoption of ordinance 2020-12.
I can second that.
Thank you. Greg, could we have a roll call?
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
Actually, you want me to come later, sorry. Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Flandacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the introduction of an ordinance, ordinance 2020-13, which is actually an amendment to the 2020-11. Greg, could you start us off by reading the title, please?
Ordinance 2020-13, an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, amending ordinance 2020-11, creating a new R3 Affordable Housing Residence District, R3AH, by clarifying that the group home lot will be cleared and leveled to allow for the construction of a group home on the lot.
Thank you, Greg. And maybe just to explain that in layman's terms a little bit, there was language in the Hillside Avenue ordinance as adopted that was a little bit unclear about the leveling of the lot. It is the developer and owner of that property is responsible for conveying to the township a level lot, but nothing involving a construction of a foundation there. That being said, this is the introduction of an ordinance. Can I have a motion to introduce?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Greg, can we have a roll call for introduction?
Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Flandacco?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Mrs. Ness?
Yes.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes, and if I may quick consult with our attorney, is the next meeting okay for a public hearing, or should we give more time for any planning board review?
Mr. Clerk, this does have to refer to the planning board. So you would have to provide for sufficient time for the planning board to consider this ordinance. It is a part of the zoning ordinance, so it would have to be referred to the planning board for a master plan and consistency determination.
The public hearing will schedule for the August 13th meeting.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-169. Greg, could you read the title of this resolution?
This is 169.
Yes.
Resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the Township of Chatham Planning Board to undertake a preliminary investigation to determine whether the land known as Block 128, Lot 2, as shown on the Township of Chatham tax map, and commonly known as 522 Southern Boulevard, qualifies as an area in need of condemnation redevelopment.
Thank you, Greg. Albert, could you give us some background on this?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, I will speak as to both the first and second resolutions on the agenda, resolutions 169 and 170. Resolution 169 authorizes the planning board to conduct a preliminary investigation to determine whether 522 Southern Boulevard is an area in need of condemnation redevelopment. This resolution only authorizes a review of that property as compared to the criteria in the local redevelopment and housing laws to determine whether an area is in need of redevelopment. On July 20, 2020, the Planning Board will consider authorizing the Township Planner to proceed with the preliminary investigation. When authorizing a preliminary investigation, the Township Committee must also state whether It is an area in either to be either condemned or non-condemned. It is a procedural matter that must be stated at the time the Township Committee authorizes the Planning Board to proceed forward. If the Township Committee does not identify it as an area in need of condemnation redevelopment, then the Township Committee would be foreclosed in the future without a showing of extraordinary circumstances from proceeding to condemnation. This is merely a resolution authorizing a study. It does not constitute a designation of the property. If the Planning Board authorizes the preliminary study, there will be a hearing before the Planning Board during which members of the public will be allowed to speak and comment upon that investigation. If the Planning Board determines that it is an area in need of redevelopment, condemnation redevelopment, then the matter comes back to the Township Committee for a designation. So this is a preliminary step to make a determination as to whether or not the property qualifies. Resolution 2020-170 authorizes solicitation for a redeveloper for 522 Southern Boulevard. Again, this is a preliminary matter. This is authorizing the formal solicitation of a redeveloper. It is not an award of a contract. It is not a designation of an area in need of condemnation redevelopment. The resolution authorizes the Township Administrator and myself to prepare the necessary bidding document and to solicit bids. The attorney for the property owner did speak earlier, and he is correct. He did submit a letter to me late this afternoon where he makes the same request that he made orally, that the Township Committee not adopt these resolutions because it is premature in their judgment. However, these are, as I said, procedural and preparatory steps that are required in order for the Township to proceed in the future. Again, the authorization to solicit bids doesn't mean you're going to designate the property as an area in need of redevelopment. Doesn't mean you're going to designate a redeveloper. It just puts those steps in place. Now, because this is dealing with replacing the River Road property with the Southern Boulevard property, committee member Swartz would be recused from participating in these two resolutions. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer questions that the Township Committee may have before you act on these resolutions.
Albert, am I out of bounds in asking whether a discussion on the options besides condemnation is appropriate at this point?
Yes.
I won't ask it then.
Thank you.
No problem.
Do we have any other questions for Albert from members of the Township Committee? I guess I would just want to emphasize that we are not taking a decision to act on condemnation right now. We are not, this is, as Albert said, is a direction to the Planning Board to undertake a preliminary investigation of the property. And there'll be public hearings and future actions and votes and decisions that have to be made down the road. But that being said, and if there are no questions about Resolution 2020-169, we have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Greg?
Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Fundaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Swartz, I believe, was recused. Deputy Mayor Ness
Yes.
and Mayor Kelly.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Greg. Which brings us to the second resolution, which Albert was discussing, with Resolution 2020-170. Greg, could you read the title of that resolution, please?
Yes, Resolution 2020-170, resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the Township Administrator and Attorney to prepare and solicit requests for proposals or requests for qualifications for a redeveloper and for a redeveloper for Block 128, Lot 2, as shown on the Township of Chatham tax map, and commonly known as 522 Southern Boulevard.
Thank you, Greg. Could I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-170?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Before we vote, any comments or questions for anybody on the Township Committee? Greg, could you do a roll call?
Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Condaco?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yes.
Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next item on the agenda is Resolution 2020-171. Greg, could you read the title, please?
Resolution of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing the Township Attorney to file suit against the Bank of America to close an account in the name of the Glenwood Housing Corporation and to turn over the funds in that account to the Township as the successor in interest to the corporation.
Thank you, Greg.
Mr. Mayor, if I may address that resolution also.
Yes, please.
The Glenwood Housing Corporation was the affordable housing administrative agent for the municipalities until approximately 2005, more or less. That function has now been taken over by Piazza and Associates, and Piazza and Associates is the administrative agent for the municipality. When the Glenwood Housing Corporation was originally established, it was established to administer the controls at Vernon Grove. That function has been taken over by Piazza and Associates in addition to other affordable housing functions. Over the years, the Glenwood Housing Corporation was able to make deposits into its own account, and the charter for the Glenwood Housing Corporation provides that if the housing corporation is no longer functioning, that it can be dissolved, and that the funds that it may have on hand may be, after paying any debts that the Glenwood Housing Corporation may have, turned over to the municipality, to the township. The Glenwood Housing Corporation has not existed or functioned for many, many years, has not filed any of the annual reports, has not taken any steps to maintain itself as an active corporate entity. I know that because I've done searches, corporate searches for Glenwood, and it is essentially by operation of law no longer in business. So this resolution authorizes me to file suit against the Bank of America to turn over those funds to the municipality. I earlier this year asked Bank of America formally to turn over those funds, but the Bank of America said it would not turn over those funds without a court order authorizing the turnover of funds. That is precisely the right position for the bank to take because it wants to ensure that it turns over any funds it has to the correct legal entity of that money. So this allows me to file suit against the Bank of America, not making any specific claim against them for anything other than turning over the funds in the account to the township. Those funds would in turn be deposited into your affordable housing trust fund, because the purpose of that fund is to promote affordable housing, and that's why the Glenwood Housing Corporation had funds in the first place. So
Thank you, Albert.
it'd be appropriate to entertain a motion to adopt that resolution, or I will answer any other questions.
Let's do the motion first and then ask for questions from the Township Committee. Can I have a motion to adopt?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone on the Township Committee?
Albert, you said this was Vernon Grove, Glenwood went defunct when?
Probably 2005. I know that Piazza and Associates came on to serve the township as administrative agent sometime in 2006, 7, or 8. I'm not sure the exact date, but they may not have been exactly defunct in 2005, but they haven't taken any steps to do anything and keep its active status since then.
So could we have received that money voluntarily turned over from Glenwood in 2005 when they ceased operations?
If they existed, yes. If they decided to dissolve themselves voluntarily, they could have done that. And their charter says that if they have any funds, you pay any debts that they have, and then whatever is left over goes to the municipality for affordable housing purposes. So it's.
Do we know why that didn't happen?
No, I don't. It was before I became township attorney. I do not know.
I think the last time that the Glenwood Housing Corporation meaningfully existed was sometime back when I was still in high school, sometime back in the mid-1990s.
Wow. How much money are we talking about?
$72,000 more or less.
72,000?
72.
Yes. Most of the members of the last board of directors for the corporation have passed away. So when we did a search to try and see if we could get them to sign affidavits, that is not going to happen. So this is our only recourse.
And I think anyone else who is living out of state.
Yes.
So, well, at least we got, 15 years of interest on that money, hopefully?
Yes, it is in an interest-bearing escrow account, yes.
All right, that's good. That's good to know. It's always great to get money back, especially for affordable housing.
These funds were collected over the years with the intent of taking care of the Vernon Grove properties? Is that?
I'm not quite sure what the purpose was. The clerk has been kind enough to provide a lot of records for me. While he's provided a lot of information, it's sparse. If your question asks, is this development fees? No, it is not development fees. As I understand it, it was funds generated from the sale and resale of units there between when they were built in 1986 or so through 2005-06. So it was generated as a result of resales and sales.
Okay. Because I just remember that part of the extension of affordable housing controls for Vernon Grove was that they needed some things taken care of, and we had to set aside funds annually. So it's interesting that this money was sitting there potentially to take care of that complex. But it's good to know it's going to be moved into affordable housing trust either way.
Right. The two, I believe, are unrelated. One results from deficiencies in the association there being able to collect the association dues, and what you're provided for is relief for capital expenditures. Your current spending plan of affordable housing trust funds does allow reimbursement to the town for those expenditures. So this money can be added for that purpose and other affordable purposes.
Okay.
And to that end, Mrs. Ewald, it's worth noting that this effort is only being undertaken after Mr. Chris has exhausted several other efforts and spent a good amount of time trying to address this by other means.
Oh, thank you. Between Mr. Cruz and Mr. Hoffman, there's all kinds of money being found and saved. I appreciate everybody's efforts, and Mr. Eschke as well.
Anyone else have a comment? And Greg, we've had the motion. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Ewell?
Yes.
Mrs. Renato?
Yes.
Mrs. Schwartz?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Ness?
Yeah.
And Mayor Kelly?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. That brings us to our hearing for citizens. This is on opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearings tonight. The request that we'll repeat that please identify yourself by name and address when you raise your hand and are recognized. Please, comments will be limited to 5 minutes. And then rather than using your time, we'll wait until each speaker has finished to respond to those questions or comments. We ask that you limit it to 1 5-minute period.
First up, we have Mr. Paul Eilinger.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
You have the floor.
Paul Heitlinger from Lake Road, behind the Charlie Brown site. So, Mayor and Deputy Mayor Ness, when we met, you guys never mentioned anything about condemning the site. Can you please explain what the purpose of moving forward with the analysis or whatever, I can't remember what you call it, the determining whether the site needs to be condemned and what the reason is behind that, and then what are the criteria for having a site condemned, and if it is condemned, what does that mean? It means nothing to me, so.
As far as the criteria questions go, I definitely would refer that to our attorney, but I think that maybe just a preliminary comment, just from a layman's term and from point of view and from the mayor's point of view, we have been amicably talking to the owners of the property, and we continue to amicably talk to the owners of the property. As you know, we did at a previous Township Committee meeting, we authorized an appraisal of the property to try to clarify the true market value of the property. And that will be in the works, and that will be part of future, we hope, amicable conversations with the owner. The hope is that as we move forward, that we can clarify what the, again, true market value is, because that's the purpose of this whole exercise, is to make sure that we are properly paying a property owner for the true value of their property. But as Albert explained from a legal perspective earlier this evening, that the next step is to authorize the planning board to undertake a preliminary investigation to determine if 522 Southern Boulevard qualifies as an area in need of redevelopment. And that can be done as either an area in need of condemnation redevelopment or non-condemnation. And unless you identify it right from this first step as a condemnation redevelopment, that it takes exceptional circumstances to go back and change that later in the process. So what we are doing tonight is for the purposes of undertaking a preliminary investigation for the purposes of determining if this is an area in need of redevelopment, we are adding the word condemnation. And that is a long way from taking any action on it, but it is there as part of the resolution at this stage. Because Albert, do you want to explain that in any further terms than, and in terms of the criteria, perhaps, is that something, or should that wait properly for the planning board's public hearing?
Well, first of all, in terms of the authority to condemn, the New Jersey Fair Housing Act authorizes any municipality in the state of New Jersey to condemn property for affordable housing. There are several factors why this site was selected, and those will be fully vetted before the planning board at various junctures. The mayor is correct that the local housing and redevelopment law does require determination at the very beginning of the process as to whether it's an area in need of condemnation or non-condemnation redevelopment. This does not foreclose the municipality from voluntarily acquiring the property and having negotiations with the property owner. In fact, the law requires that the municipality and the property owner engage in good faith negotiations. However, the township, for the purposes of redevelopment, has to express an intent, and that's what this is, an intent that it will condemn the property if necessary. So there will be, as I said, a report prepared by the municipal planner that will be the subject of a public hearing at the planning board. And that if the planning board determines based on the planner's recommendation and findings that there is an area in need of redevelopment, then the planning board makes a recommendation to the township committee, and then the township committee does the formal designation. So the next steps after this occurs will be before the planning board. And as I indicated before, on July 20th, the planning board will consider whether to direct the planner to conduct the study. And this is what it is. It's a study to determine whether the criteria under the local redevelopment and housing law are met, whether one or more of those criteria are met. And that's the function of the report, and that's the function of the public hearing before the planning board.
Thank you, Albert. I failed to ask Mr. Heitlinger if he was finished asking his questions, and before we started answering. Could you please, Greg, just recognize his hand again? And that was my failure.
So I just want to be absolutely clear. You didn't quite answer my question about why you need to go through that process, but my understanding now is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if you can't negotiate a acquisition of the property to mutually agreeable terms, you're going to you may condemn the property and force the acquisition of that property if the seller does not come to terms. Is that correct?
Well, I would probably state it slightly differently, and that is the township is demonstrating here that it intends to condemn the property if it cannot come to a voluntary acquisition. It is not a determination that it will do so, but it is an expression of the intent. There are still several other steps that have to occur, and this is one of those steps. So that you're asking a question that, as the mayor said, is not being decided today. All that is being decided is to authorize the study to proceed forward, and the town has an option to designate it either as condemnation or non-condemnation. If it designates it as non-condemnation, then the municipality is foreclosed in the future from using this particular authority under the local housing and redevelopment law to condemn property.
Thank you, Albert. Does anyone else have their hand up, Greg?
Yes, next up we have Kimberly Flynn.
Okay, if you recognize her. And Kimberly, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kimberly Flynn. I live at 2 Daniel Street. I also abut the property that's in question right now, or that you just made the motion on. Just a couple of points really quickly. Everybody, I think, is having a tough time hearing the township clerk. Mayor Kelly, you're referring to him as Greg. And I think that's what's causing a little bit of the confusion earlier. So I just want to let you know that. And also, thank you, Mayor Kelly, for when you're giving it in layman's terms. That's really helpful because there's a lot of legalese, and for a lot of people I think who are attending, it's new to them. I don't understand why when you did the resolutions 169 and 170, would seem like the other ones everybody could kind of ask questions about before you voted, and this one, these two, you didn't. So I don't know if there's a different kind of resolution or whatever, but it just seemed a little odd. I also would like to point out that I know we're very early in the process, but I think it's really is significant for other people who may be listening in to understand what's happening with the Charlie Brown's property a little bit more. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that. I know a lot of people in our neighborhood, a small neighborhood of just about 30 houses, are concerned, not because we're NIMBYs, which is a derogatory term, but I would say most of us are IMBYs, like we want this affordable housing to happen, and we want it to happen in our backyard, but we want it to happen in a way that's very transparent and that we get to have our voices heard. And it's just this kind of problem with the technology and things that we're concerned about not being heard, as some of the other areas of town have been able to be heard. And I guess my thing that I want to say about being heard is I'd like it to be here. I just want it to be fewer. When it comes time to look at that, I just want to be on record as saying I want fewer of the affordable housing units put in there. And I know that other surrounding towns, for instance, Madison, have 40 in one spot, not 62. I know it's a monetary concern, but I want other people in the rest of the township to know a little bit more about this. And I'm sure we'll be back again to say more about it, but just to get that ball rolling, instead of saying all night, it's just preliminary, this is just preliminary, but we all know that it's gonna go forward. And when it goes forward, we want stuff that we care about to be on the record. The other thing that I'd like to be on the record, and I'm sure I'm nearing my 5 minutes and I apologize, but this backs right up to wetlands. Wetlands and a lake that nobody in town seems to know about except us. And we wanna be extremely certain that we are going, that area is going to be protected, that the wildlife and the green space and the footprint, if buildings do go up, remains the same. And if they do go up, that's extremely important that the environment be taken into consideration, just as it has everywhere else in town. Thank you. I don't really have a question.
Thank you. Just the question earlier about resolutions and the opportunity to comment on them. The way the excuse me, the procedure on that is ordinances, and the title on the agenda identifies this as public hearings and final adoption for ordinances. And in that case, there is a separate public hearing on each ordinance that is up for final hearing and adoption. However, all other items on the agenda are really fair game for comment at either of the public comment sessions, one early in the agenda and one late in the agenda, which is where we are now. So that's the opportunity to be heard on any item at all, and any item on the agenda that does not have its own dedicated public hearing, which is what those two ordinances had. So, and going forward, there definitely will be a multitude of public hearings. The items that are on the agenda tonight are going to the planning board for their public hearing, discussion, and consideration. The other items that you raise about the concern about the wetlands, they will definitely be topic of significant concern and protection as we go forward. You know, in terms of if anyone else has any kind of larger questions about where we are with affordable housing, we do have an affordable housing page on our website with some frequently asked questions, and that might be some helpful background. And also on that website, there are two presentations. One is called the Walters Group presentation, which is about affordable housing, and one is the Novell presentation about group homes. And both of those have some excellent detailed background about both those topics. The Walters presentation did deal specifically with the River Road site. So the actual part of that presentation that has to do with that site and retaining walls and things of that nature do not apply to the Charlie Brown site. But a lot of the background about who qualifies for affordable housing, the income limits, the design of the apartments, both inside and the conceptual outside, all of that would be very helpful for anybody who's you know, trying to get some background on where things are at this point. And like I said, there are going to be a lot of public hearings on this going forward. Greg, anyone else with their hands up?
Yes, next we have Dan Miller. Dan, you're active?
Yes, Dan Miller, Green Village Road. First, I just wanted to tag on to what I said earlier with the noise and the bicycle riders. We all know that we do have a noise ordinance, and we know that 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:30 in the morning, that that noise ordinance should be enforced. And that's, I'm driving at that. I'm not driving at, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, so on and so forth. I mean, that's all understandable, and people should be able to have a good time and enjoy themselves. But 5:30, 6 o'clock, 6:30 in the morning, 7 days a week, those ordinances, that ordinance should be enforced. And when it comes to the bike riders, it certainly is not. But it appears that with leaf blowers, because people now are working at home in other areas of town, it is. And I would just like to see a little bit of equity there as far as what I discussed with the bike riders. I have also a comment and a question. We were told numerous times over the course of, Lord only knows how many months, that discussions in executive session, negotiations on acquiring properties would never be discussed in a public session. But now all of a sudden, when it comes to Charlie Brown's, it's come out to be in public session and not an executive session. So my question to that is, why at this time and with this property? The other thing I wanted to say is that, I think it was right to hold those discussions in executive session, because when it's in public session, it certainly does hurt not only the township's position, but the position of the business owner. And it also could give the impression that we are preying upon a business owner in town, given the circumstances that have been going on in the world lately. So, I think that was the right decision originally. I want to know why there was such a reversal. And then I also find uncomfortability living in Chatham Township that we would, prior to even acquiring a property, give the perception, and the perception is a big word here, of a threat of condemnation. I think we've been down that road before when we were looking at, a sewer connection up on River Road. And, I have to appreciate Ms. Ewald's comments on that night about that subject. But here we find ourselves again, prior to making an acquisition of a property, saying, well, if things go sour, we have this option, and we're also doing it publicly. And I find uncomfortability with that, as I'm sure many other people do in town. But the ultimate question is, why now is this negotiation allowed to be in the public eye when many other properties, as we said, were sought out in the area of Hickory Tree, were specifically said that we can't speak about any of those discussions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I think this, Albert, do you want to reply to that?
Well, the discussion tonight is consistent with everything the Township Committee has done and said in the past. Contract negotiations and the particulars of those negotiations will not be discussed in public, and they haven't been discussed in public tonight. What has been discussed in public is procedural steps that need to be taken and are required by the law. So the Township Committee is doing nothing more than being transparent and complying with applicable law with respect to the necessary authorizations that are needed to go forward. We're not discussing terms. We're not discussing anything that would be considered a business term or business condition. And again, this is required by the law if the township wants to proceed in this particular fashion. And in order to be transparent, it has to announce its intentions to the property owner and to the world at the beginning of the process. This is not a disclosure of what was offered, any counteroffers, assuming there were. It's a discussion of none of that. And so there will be, as the mayor said, and as required by the law, a period of good faith negotiations. Those good faith negotiations will remain private.
Thank you, Albert.
I agree with what I was going to say. I was going to say this was just, public action that needed to be taken so that we proceed with, with negotiations.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Bob.
I was just saying that these actions, and Albert was more articulate about it. These were the actions that were being taken in public were necessary actions so that we could negotiate in good faith and move forward as we have with other properties in the negotiation process.
And I think, Dan, to answer one of your questions about why now or why before, one of the issues that we ran up against as we were negotiating was that this information.
Well, now, Ms. Ness, I think beyond, we've said enough about this. We're not going to go into any details on negotiations or anything else. The response, I believe, was fully adequately answered by Mr. Hoffman and myself.
Oh, all right, Albert.
Very good. Greg, does anybody else have their hands up?
Yes, next up we have Gennady Dusky.
Hi, my name is Gennady. I live at 39 Lake Road. Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say I certainly appreciate the level of transparency, and I did not agree with the previous speaker. I think level of transparency is good for me as a taxpayer here. My question really is, I'm concerned with regards to environmental impact of Charlie Brown site. And my question is the township going to do any environmental study, and what is the date for that? And my second question, I think from what I gather from the public sources, Madison is under the same obligation with regards to affordable housing, and they are trying to move their site from the previous location. They are looking for a new location. So is the township committee in any communication with Madison, and are we running a risk of creating super density of affordable housing in this area should Madison build a house on the other side of Shanpike Road? Thank you.
Thank you. Environmental studies, yes, they will definitely be done. There will be significant detailed public hearings before the planning board, but we will be proceeding with those. And in terms of when, it's premature to really say that at this point. So, but these things do take time, and you can appreciate what step we're at now is a very preliminary step. So I think it's expected that there is no answer at this point about a specific time for that kind of a hearing. But I can assure you that there are environmental standards that have to be met, as well as a lot of other requirements. So and all those will be done in public.
Just as an adjunct to that, for people who aren't familiar with this process, the Dixie-Dale development and the affordable housing on the skate park took about a year and a half at the planning board stage. So there were numerous presentations, there were designs, there were redesigns, there were environmental considerations certainly on that site. So there's, again, it's about a year and a half process. I don't know if it'll take that long for this because that was 2 sites versus this being 1 site. But it is a lengthy and involved process through the planning board.
Okay, and
Is there a question?
there was a question about what Madison's plans were. They have a number of different options on their table, and I don't know of any that are affecting this neighborhood, but there certainly is nothing in advanced state that any of us know about.
Yeah, well, we can certainly follow up with Mayor. I know that they were originally looking to put it on some land that was used with Green Acres money, and they got declined for that. One of the reasons why they only have 40 units is that Madison has continuously built affordable housing over the past 30 years. The township has not. So we have 98 units in total that we have to build. But we will follow up with the mayor of Madison and make sure and find out if there's any plans for development on the opposite side of Shunpike.
I would like to point out to Mr. Uski as well as to Mrs. Flynn and the other folks in the neighborhood that we are abundantly aware of the fact that there is a lake back there. We also know that over the course of the years, John Rushke can certainly attest to that. We have had concerns with obviously any kind of chemical use on the playing fields at Shunpike with runoff from the condominiums across the street, which are in fact Madison's already. And, you know, when you start looking at roof lines and runoff and stormwater management and how that might impact the lake and the entire neighborhood where you folks live, we are abundantly aware of it. And that is something that John Rushke is actually quite adept at, addressing stormwater management. When the Dixie Dale development was really at the height of the public interest, the folks from the condominiums in the Chatham Glen condominium complex were very vocal. They were very involved and very willing to be forthcoming with their anecdotal experiences. So as far as being downstream from things like this, it is really important that you stay engaged no matter what the circumstances are. So thanks for getting the ball rolling. We're with you.
Thank you, Karen. Greg, anyone else with their hand up?
Yes, we have comments from Monica.
Very good.
If you could give her a full name and address.
Yes, Monica Pandalik, 7 Joseph Street. I just actually want to reiterate several of the points already made. Dr. Kim Flynn mentioned most of our concerns, that it is not the fact that affordable housing is going up, it is the amount of units that you're intending to put in this small 3-acre commercial lot. And again, these are my objections to be stated on the record. The other issue which Ms. Swartz just addressed is we felt that there was no due diligence performed as to the environmental impacts before announcing the new site. It seemed quite premature. And again, I think the other issue is we feel that we've seen all of the objections from the River Road folks and the skate park folks and the Myersville Road folks, and we're a small community here. And when these Zoom conferences occur, you know, we feel we're at a real disadvantage because we would like to be seen and heard just as all those other parts of Chatham were allowed to be heard. So, you know, in that way, we do feel we're prejudiced from not having that same opportunity. Again, the condemnation issue was not addressed when we met with the mayor previously. So my one question is, if this property is condemned, does that have any impact on the implementation plan that will ultimately be provided to the Fair Housing Authority? And because I know that that's why Myersville Road was supposedly rejected, was due to that implementation plan. So what impact would the property being condemned or not have on a possible implementation plan to the Charlie Brown site?
Thank you. And that's the that finishes your comment, Monica?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. What impact does condemnation have?
Let me just respond to that question, and it's to the implementation schedule. And yes, the implementation schedule will consider condemnation and the potential redevelopment of this site. That is, there will be an implementation schedule that addresses that. Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Greg, any other hands up?
Yes, we have a phone number ending in 1876.
Yeah, hi, this is Fran Leff. I'm from 12 Joseph Street, also in the community of the others that were speaking. And with all due respect, Ms. Schwartz, I don't think that anyone on the committee, and certainly not John Rushke, could give two hoots about us and the lake. And so I respect your comments, but we have seen the degradation of our lake over the years. We have raised our concerns. Nothing has been done. John well knows, because he knows my property, and the concerns that I have with the runoff and the storm drains that are not sufficient. So I just want to go on record to make a note that while I appreciate you making a comment about our lake, we don't see it, we don't feel it, and we are very concerned about this property, about, abutting to our lake and what might happen to our lake. Thank you.
Thank you. I just would want to repeat what we said before is that that concern of the neighborhood is very much on our radar. The priority that you're placing on the need for an adequate buffer and the awareness of any plans to take into consideration the water and wetlands is definitely a high concern for us as well. And I'm sorry we don't have specific answers for you at this time, but I hope you understand that this is all very preliminary, and that as Deputy Mayor Ness said, the Dixie Dale project and the linked affordable housing at the skate park literally was before the planning board for a year and a half. There were countless public meetings, public comments and questions by members of the audience, and all kinds of conditions that were applied by the planning board to try to make sure that both those projects address those concerns. So we'll definitely be doing the same thing as we go forward.
Can we just also interject that we will really want to discuss rejoining with the public in public meetings once we can figure out whether the COVID virus will allow us to do that? I know I can sense the frustration in the voices of the folks who are calling in on this matter, and not being able to come out and have face-to-face discussions. I completely understand the frustration. So I think we have to make a concerted effort to figure out what getting back with the public will allow us going forward.
Good point, Karen.
Yeah, I think we probably want to finish up with public comments first, Karen, before we address that.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. I don't want members of our public who we are here to represent to think for 1 minute that we're hiding behind this new technology. It's the last thing on our minds. We're doing it for public safety because we can, and we know it's not the way of it's great. It's the way of the future, sure, under extraordinary circumstances, but this is not the way we wish to conduct business either. So.
Okay.
And I just wanted to follow up on the question from about the lake. So Mike and I met with residents, I guess it was a week and a half ago,
About that, yeah.
2 weeks ago, to hear what they had to say. And there were a lot of really good pieces of information about what was happening at the existing lot, and with regards to trash disposal and lights and the air conditioning units and things that could be considered again as part of this planning board process going forward. So make sure all of that stuff comes up. I mean, I'm keeping notes on all of that. And I think with regards to Sunset Lake, I do remember, since I used to write for the Independent Press, the issues with Sunset Lake. And that is something that can be brought up is as part of this, is there going to be any runoff that could affect Sunset Lake, but then also separately. I know there were some sedimentation controls that were put in with the overflow from Madison. But you bring that up as a separate issue. Sunset Lake is a lovely little lake, and if it's encountering problems, I know you've brought up this before previous committees, but let's bring it up and talk about it.
Thank you, Tracy Ness. Greg, anyone else with their hand up?
We have another hand up from Monica, but no numbers.
Does anybody else have a comment for the first time? We will, before we acknowledge anybody for the second time, I do want to close, and we will not be going back to hearing anyone for the first time. So again, if anybody has any other comments who has not yet spoken, please raise your hand now. That being said, recognize Monica for a second time.
Thanks. I just because we were speaking about transparency, I just don't feel like I got an answer to my question. If the property is condemned, does that expedite the implementation plan for Charlie Brown's?
That condemnation is the authority, eminent domain is a power that every municipality, every state, the country has. It's a mechanism to acquire property for, after determining, and as part of the process, determining fair market value. It is, in my opinion, my layman's opinion, it would be an alternative way to reach an acquisition, but regardless of how a municipality acquired a piece of property, it would not affect the, what was your question before? The implementation. Implementation, I think, is a separate timetable. So that would be my attempt to try to be as clear as I can, is that it's a different procedure of acquisition. It is separate from the implementation. Anyone else with their hands up, Greg?
No.
Second time? Okay, and that completes our public hearing. And that brings us to the end of our agenda for tonight. I would accept a motion to adjourn.
If I can just add, since you did mention bringing up the point of resuming our public meetings, and just to assure the public that the 5:30 start, also people are getting back on the trains, people are getting back to their offices, life is returning to normal a little bit. So getting back to our regular schedule, I know we will be trying to address that. I don't know whether anybody wants to talk about that any further.
Well, Mr. Mayor, just as a reminder, several weeks ago or several meetings ago, you did adopt a new annual notice. And that annual notice provided for, and the clerk will correct me, meetings at 5 o'clock through the end of August.
Mm-hmm.
So, pardon me?
5:30 p.m. start time for public session. And if there's going to be an executive session, that'll be at 4:30.
But the schedule at this time is to go to regular meetings at 5:30 until the second meeting in August. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then at that point, the Township Committee would have to be revisited whether or not it wants to revert back to 7 o'clock, 7:30, or continue with the 5:30 meetings. So that if you should start thinking about it, because at some point in either at the first meeting in August or the second meeting in August, you're going to have to amend your annual notice to indicate to the public at what times you'll be meeting.
Is the current schedule has 5:30 start times for July 23rd and August 13th. By way of announcements, we plan to have this special meeting on August 27th, which I'll make sure I get out the official open public meetings notice in a timely fashion. We can figure out what time that's going to start at a later time. But if no further action is taken, then in September, we'll go back to 7:30 start time, unless if the committee takes further action between now and the end of August.
And that's for the start time. Whether the meetings will be in person or not really depends upon the guidance that the governor provides and various executive orders that are being issued on a fairly regular basis.
I just wanted to say that one of the reasons we're keeping it at 5:30, and I do appreciate the fact that things are returning to normal and we are running into some time considerations at the 5:30, but our meetings were lasting 6 hours. And the reason for trying to keep it at 5:30 as we are going through this process is that if we started at 7:30, we would have to end with no new business at 11. So that was lessening the amount of time that people had given the opportunity to participate. And given that we're in this kind of strange Zoom environment where it's, you know, not as fluid as the others, we had wanted to keep it at 5:30 to allow for the maximum amount of content. So we, you know, we were going at 5.5, 6 hours at a clip. But we can certainly revisit it as people.
Yeah, my understanding was that it was with the tip of the hat to everybody working from home. And if people are going to be getting back to commuting, for them to participate in the meetings, for them at 5:30 is pretty impossible.
Yeah, I haven't gotten that feedback, but that was the intent at was keeping it at 5:30 because we were having such long meetings and to allow for everybody to contribute, but we can go back to it. And then we did look at what the numbers of people that could be in. Bob, I don't know if you want to speak about that. With the social distancing in our chambers in terms of a live meeting, we're not near that at that point.
Yes, thank you. What I had wanted to discuss with the Township Committee is that on Wednesday, July 1st, the health officer spent several hours with me walking through all of our buildings with the goal of when we're able to reopen the buildings, how would we do it safely so that our residents who would be coming into this building and perhaps a couple of others, how could we make sure that there was appropriate social distancing, and then what actions would we have to take to make sure the staff was safe, but also what kind of cleaning protocols would we be putting in. So we have taken some steps in this building for when we were able to reopen. So we have installed plexiglass at all of our offices that have counters. And when we are able to reopen this building, we're still working on what to do in this particular council chamber, because the seating capacity is 99 before COVID, but we have to have a minimum social distancing policy, and it's going to depend on whether people will have to wear masks when they're in the building for our public meetings, and it's looking like people will have to wear masks when they come into the building. If they wear masks and we have a public meeting, there's a maximum of 20 people that we could have in this chamber right now. So we're looking for some additional guidance, but if we do have public meetings, it looks like it's only going to be a maximum of 20 people that can come into this committee chamber, and then there are other cleaning protocols and things that we have to implement. And that's one of the reasons why we're also making improvements to the Zoom platform, because We need to make sure that we have as many of our residents that are able to participate as possible. Did I answer the question?
Does that 20 people include the committee members and the township professionals?
The answer, it's an economist's answer. It's partially. What it is, it depends. We have to do some measuring for how many people will be here. So we can have 20 people in the chairs, but we have to do some measuring here and reconfiguring in here before we can get that. And also, there's the state is looking at 3 different options for social distancing. Until we get that answer, I'm going to give you the economist answer.
So there'd be better public participation through Zoom than in person.
Yeah, in person, there's a maximum of 20 people that can sit in those chairs right now.
Yeah, I had also expressed, I agree with Committeewoman Swartz that I agree with the residents that it would be nice for them to have an opportunity in person, whether or not that's a special meeting that we hold. But I think it would be good for them to have, at least one shot in person. And I guess the question I had is whether or not we could look at a different venue, either the gym, because like they said, there's only 30 households in that community. If we look at the gym, I know it creates complications with broadcasting because now we go back to transparency and using Zoom and cablecast to broadcast. But if there's any way to either look at the high school gym or the gym downstairs at the municipal building, if that's feasible, given all the other things that have to get accomplished for a meeting.
Well, that doesn't preclude us from having town halls either. I mean, we don't all of us have to be there at once. When we had meetings with the Chatham Glen residents, when Dixie Dale was first in the formulary stages, and specifically regarding development, regarding runoff, regarding a lot of different things that impact the residents at Chatham Glen. And we used their facilities, we could use the gym, we could use another place, and just, hopefully limit it to residents immediately impacted by it. But a town hall is a good idea too.
Very good.
Okay.
Unless there are other comments, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I just wanted to ask for anyone watching TV land with our new technology, our new AV upgrades, if any members of the public watching on TV have any comments, good, bad, or indifferent, they can feel free to reach out to me tomorrow to let me know if the audio is noticeably better or worse, or if their user experience is in any way impacted by the upgrades that we did. I welcome any feedback so we can figure out what we can do better.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Night.